Imagine standing on a Montreal street in the middle of a hot July afternoon. The air is warm, neighbors are chatting, kids are playing, and life feels calm and familiar. Then suddenly, you hear a sharp crack, like a piece of wood snapping. You look up. A thin trail of smoke rises from a nearby roof. At first, it seems small, almost harmless. But within minutes, the sky darkens, the wind picks up, and the whole neighborhood realizes the same terrifying truth. Montreal is about to face one of the most destructive fires in its entire history. This is the story of the Great Fire of 1852, a fire so powerful, so fast, and so unstoppable that people said it moved like a living creature. But it's also the story of courage, teamwork, and a city that refused to stay down. On July 8, 1852, Montreal was growing quickly. The city was full of wooden homes, wooden roofs, wooden fences. Almost everything could burn. It had been an extremely dry summer, and the wind was strong that day. One tiny spark was all that took. That spark came from a house on St. Laurent Boulevard. No one noticed at first. Someone might have been cooking. Maybe there was a chimney problem. All anyone knew was that smoke suddenly appeared, and the wind immediately grabbed the flames and carried them forward, like a torch being swung through the air. The fire spread unbelievably fast. People who were nearby said it looked like fire leaping from rooftop to rooftop. Flames twisted and turned, rising higher than buildings, chasing people down the street. The heat became so intense that people said it felt painful even when they weren't close to the flames. The air was filled with sparks, and each spark had the power to start a brand new fire somewhere else. Families rushed outside with whatever they could carry. Blankets, shoes, family portraits, pets, a little bag of clothes. Some people had only seconds before the fire reached their door. Mothers gathered their children, neighbors shouted warnings, and strangers banged on doors to wake people up. Everyone moved together, almost like a single crowd, trying to escape the fire as it grew behind them. Firefighters arrived as fast as they could, but the fire was already too large. Montreal's firefighters were brave and dedicated, but their hoses were short, their pumps slow, and they didn't have enough water pressure to reach the giant walls of flames. They climbed ladders and tried to spray the burning roofs, but the fire simply roared over them. Some firefighters had to pull people away from collapsing roofs or burning staircases. They worked non-stop, even when their uniforms were smoking from the heat. Within an hour, whole streets were burning. Fences acted like perfect bridges for the flames. Shingles blew off roofs and landed on nearby houses, starting even more fires. Sparks landed on people's clothes. Store signs caught fire. Windows exploded from the heat, sending glass flying. The fire sounded like thunder, loud, crashing, and non-stop. The church bells began to ring wildly, warning the rest of the city. Montrealers from other neighborhoods rushed outside, looking toward the rising black cloud and realizing with shock that something enormous was happening. People ran to help. Some formed long lines, passing buckets of water from hand to hand. Others grabbed tools and tore down small sheds to make fire breaks, empty spaces that could stop the flames. Children carried water, and teenagers helped families move their belongings. Everyone worked together, and everyone was afraid. The fire burned so hot that even houses made of stone began to crack. Entire roofs fell in like paper. People shouted to each other over the roar of flames and the crash of falling beams. They could smell burning wood, burning cloth, burning paint, and the thick, heavy smoke that made their eyes sting and their lungs ache. It was chaos, but it was also a powerful moment of unity. By late afternoon, the fire was unstoppable. More than 1,100 buildings were already gone. The sky glowed orange, and the streets were filled with smoke so thick it felt like walking through fog. Families searched for each other in the crowd, calling out names. Horses pulling carts panicked and tried to run. Volunteers did everything they could to help firefighters, but the flames continued to grow. Finally, as evening approached, something changed. The wind, which had fueled the fire all day, began to calm. Clouds gathered overhead, the air cooled, and for the first time, firefighters had a chance to fight back. They used every bit of strength they had left, spraying water into the last burning buildings and knocking down walls that threatened to spread the fire again. When the rain finally began to fall, the fire slowly faded, leaving behind a city that looked like a battlefield. When Montrealers woke up the next morning, the city felt silent.
Streets that had once been full of life were now covered in ashes. Trees stood like black skeletons. Buildings were piles of burnt beams. Smoke still rose from the rubble. People walked slowly through the ruins, trying to recognize where their homes once stood. Some cried. Some bent down to search for anything that survived. A teacup, a toy, a Bible, a piece of clothing. Many found nothing at all. But even in this sadness, something incredible happened. The people of Montreal came together like never before. Families who still had homes invited strangers inside. Churches opened their doors to everyone, offering food, water, blankets, and comfort. Volunteers built temporary shelters. People shared tools, money, and supplies. Even children helped by gathering wood or carrying blankets. Everyone worked together, and everyone was afraid. Leaders realized that rebuilding the city meant rethinking everything. Wooden roofs would be replaced with safer materials like metal and slate. Streets would be widened. Firefighting equipment would be upgraded. Water pressure systems would be improved. It wasn't just about fixing what broke. It was about making Montreal stronger than before. And slowly, that is exactly what happened. Hammer by hammer, brick by brick, the city rose again. New homes were built, new businesses opened, new families moved in, and Montreal grew into the vibrant, resilient city that we know today. The Great Fire of 1852 wasn't just a disaster. It was a turning point. It showed how fragile a city can be, but also how powerful a community becomes when people stand together. Montreal didn't just survive the fire, it transformed because of it. The disaster led to better streets, stronger buildings, safer neighborhoods, and a city that learned how to protect itself. Today, when you walk through Montreal's historic districts, you are walking through the results of that rebuilding. Strong stone buildings, wider roads, and a community spirit shaped by a moment when people chose hope over despair. The Great Fire may have burned part of the city, but it sparked something even stronger: the determination to rebuild and rise again. And that is the story of how Montreal faced one of its darkest days and emerged with a brighter future. If you enjoyed this journey through Canadian history, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that shaped our country. Thanks for watching, and keep exploring the past, because every great city has a story written in both flames and hope.